Hey everyone, today I want to talk a little bit about rotator cuff tears. I've been writing a bit and I wrote a blog about how exercise can help even if you have a rotator cuff tear. Now when we talk rotator cuff tears, what that really means is that the tendon that attaches the muscle to the top of your shoulder has a tear in it. And in most cases people would think, well, if it's torn, how is exercise going to help? So one thing that you need to understand about the rotator cuff tendons is that it's a little bit different than some other tendons that we might know about. So for instance, if you think the Achilles tendon, the one on the back of your heel, it's thick and it's like a rope. And if you tear that, it's a big deal. You're not going to be able to walk, you're not going to be able to push off at all. Now the rotator cuff tendons are different than the Achilles tendon. They're not a big rope, they're not narrow. What they are is a rotator cuff has like 4 muscles and they all converge around the top of your shoulder and they all kind of blend into one another. So although there's a tendon attached to each muscle, they all kind of blend together and they work together to move our shoulder and to stabilize our shoulder. So when you have a tear in your rotator cuff tendon, we have to remember it's only one part of the rotator cuff. And because it blends with other tendons, the other muscles that are still working can compensate and take over for the one that's torn. So an analogy that I've read about is think of the rotator cuff tendons as being, tear in the rotator cuff tendons as being like a hole in the blanket. Although there's a hole in the blanket, the outsides of the blanket still function and you could pull on the blanket and it would still withstand tearing. I have a paper towel here, same thing. Think of the tendons as being this whole piece of paper, there's a hole in it, but it can still withstand forces. So when the muscles contract, it can still work to move your shoulder. So what we do when we do exercises for rotator cuff tears is we try to strengthen the tendons that are still working so that we can put force through them gradually and your arm can still function well. So that's a great way to think about rotator cuff tears. It's a great way to look at, okay, how can exercise help even if my MRI shows that I have a rotator cuff tear? And like I said, we do that by working the muscles that are still functioning. Rotator cuff is a group of 4 muscles. Most of the time there's a tear in one of them, the other ones can help. And even with a hole in it or a tear, those tendons can still apply forces through there to allow your shoulder to work well and help with pain. So I hope that explains a little bit about how exercises could possibly work for a rotator cuff tear. If you've been diagnosed with a rotator cuff tear, maybe don't want to go through surgery. It's a big surgery, it's painful, it's a long recovery. Reach out to me and we'll talk about what might be the best options for you. Thank you.